As a global provider of those additive manufacturing solutions, we really specialize in high precision applications such as medical, aerospace, jewelry, prototyping, research, and manufacturing as well. And you can see some of the brands we serve, from 3M to Procter & Gamble, Medtronic, B. Braun, Johnson & Johnson, and the National Institute of Health. Here is a global spread of our dealers, OEM partners, and customers across the world, spanning nearly 70 countries. And briefly, I just want to touch on our workflow before we kick off with our panel as experts. So you can begin, whether in CAD in your design, going over to our print preparation software, B9 Create 2.0, or if you have a third-party material or a custom resin you've developed, we also offer a software suite that allows you to fine-tune those settings to make those materials work on our hardware platforms. From there, you can choose your engineering grade or ISO 10993 biocompatible resin and go directly into any one of our 3D printers. They are all high precision, medical grade, equipment compliant 3D printers in different platforms and sizes, all with effective resolution from 25 microns to 50 microns. When you finish printing, you can go to automate your post-processing in our B9 Clean unit, which allows you to wash parts right on the build table or loosen the part tray, and then cure your models in minutes in our B9 Model Cure. Overall, this allows you to go from print preparation through a part in hand in under an hour, which, as our panelists will touch on, speed is paramount when you're in any phase of your design cycle. So you can have a high frequency of iterations and really develop a product that meets your customers' needs. And with that, I'd like to kick it over to Scott. He's going to tell you a little bit about what he does at his medical device company, as well as the setup he has with all of the additive technology therein. Scott, would you like to start us off?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Glad you could be here with us. I'll start out with my little picture of this is part of our lab right here. It's the Where's B9 Waldo version of the picture in my mess. My path here was very hands-on. I come from more of a technical side. So within the company, I'm one of the people that are daily making parts as requested. Although we do a lot more than that, we interact every day with engineers, designers, industrial engineers in teaching them, helping them to get their ideas, their parts additive friendly, designed to be more efficient, less support, less material where appropriate, help them living hinges. What does biocompatible mean to them? What does a part that needs to be molded rather than printed? All of those trade-offs and considerations, we're consulting with them every day. In our lab, we have FDM technology, SLA, DLP, PolyJet, FDM metal also. We've got our hands on a lot of different things, and it tends to migrate towards the miniature, the small. That's one thing that's very hard to get consistent from outside vendors. So that's something that we notice is a key thing that we like to keep in-house.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Kevin, you are at Johnson & Johnson, and you also have a lab full of the latest and greatest technology. Can you talk a little bit about what you do with cardiovascular medical devices as it relates to additive technology, and maybe explain those pictures that we have up on the slide as well?
Sure. So I'm in the early stage design group, so we're in advanced R&D. A lot of the stuff we do is prototyping and concept feasibility. So, later on, I'll be speaking on the advancements of additive manufacturing and how that affects our early stage design. But, there's a ton of printers out there in the market. And one of the things that, our group does before purchasing a new printer is really trying to test capabilities. So I met, the B9 sales team at a large trade show, and I reached out to them to try to get a test printout. And that's the part that you're looking at on the screen. As you can see by the envelope size, it's really small. It's 4 millimeters by 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters. And like Scott said, everything's going to miniaturization and getting smaller. So this part is actually representative of the size and features of a complex component that we use in our catheters. Honestly, when I reached out to them, I didn't think features would be resolved. And we've tried this in a bunch of other printers, but they turned around and sent this to me within the next day. So if you're looking at the part at the top, there's two 8-thou struts. It came out perfectly vertical. There's the 3 holes horizontally along the body. Those are 3 thou in diameter by 6 thou deep, and those things resolve perfectly. And then the little 3 vertical holes on the bottom left, that's actually sitting on a fin that tapers all the way down to 1 thou. So it's really amazing to us that the technology now has really evolved so we can get these kind of parts within a few hours or even less. And yeah, I'm happy to be here and share our stories on how additive manufacturing has really affected the way we design and develop.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love this photo because it is very illustrative of what both of you mentioned about this trend in medical device manufacturing towards the miniature and how the technology has to keep up with the needs of your guys' customers. Thank you, Kevin. I'd love to kick it over to you, Ben. You know, have a little bit different flavor, and I know you recently took on this role, so I'd love for you to share with our audience what it is that you do at your medical device manufacturing.
Sure, Danny. I've, in my 22nd year in the device R&D department, and working through OEM jobs, through our innovation R&D group, and now in the human factors area. And I found application throughout the decades for additive manufacturing all along the way. I've got to say, though, that there are so many advances since 20 years ago. The service bureaus do quite a good job, but the turnaround time is 2 or 3 days, which is good compared to rapid insert molding, which can be weeks. But the biggest advantages that I see, in addition to the details that are available now, is the quality of the materials and how representative they are of thermoplastics. Our business is very focused on IV sets and single-use devices, and these representative materials are phenomenal. I'm able to now take the knowledge that I gained over the years and use that in my human factors role to work from low fidelity, sort of minimum viable concepts, putting them in the hands of users, and iterate quickly to refine design that meets our very high bar for intuitive use in the human factors realm.
Wonderful. So with that introduction, we'd like to have each of our panelists are going to talk a little bit about how they leverage additive manufacturing in the medical device development lifecycle, from early stage concepts where Kevin works in advanced R&D, through clinical tests that Scott will touch on, all the way through what it looks like to perfect a device in the field. With that, Kevin, could you talk a little bit about how it plays in your role, how the nature of design has changed based on the additive technology capabilities that you've brought in-house, and kind of what are some best practices, lessons learned, things that our audience can take away?
Sure. So during the early feasibility stage, you have a ton of unknowns. You're pretty much starting from scratch. And so your goal is really to iterate and test your design as quickly as possible. So you eventually steer your way to a safe design that can be used in humans. So, as additive manufacturing has really evolved, the way we design and iterate has also changed. So one of the things we say here in advanced R&D is, expect failure early, but do it quickly, fail quickly. And so what that really means is, test your design and improve it through each iteration. And, before, if it would take weeks or months to get a part machined or ordered, that would delay the time to market significantly. It'll delay, all your testing, and it can put your project in jeopardy. So the advancements in 3D printing have really taken a lot of the unknowns out of the iterative process by allowing us just to pretty much within a day we know, if a design really works for us. So while we haven't really moved forward with like parts in human use with additive manufacturing, it's really allowed us to move forward with the designs, with great confidence that will perform how we need it to clinically. So, Scott touched on this before, you can even use 3D printers to make molds now. And so what that means is instead of using a 3D printer to make a part with a material that you're probably not going to use in a clinical trial, you can now make a mold and then use the exact resin that you're going to be using. And you can even go into biocop testing with that. And, by saving on iteration time early on, 3D printing has really cut the risk for companies significantly when they have to decide whether or not to invest in a project, for a full time, or just cut it right there in the concept phase.
That's wonderful. Do you have any illustrative or real life examples where, because of the technology, you're able to increase your iterations or kind of diffuse some of that risk in a concrete way by being able to hand someone a proof of concept?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I mean, this whole week I've been doing this with our technicians. We're trying to get a new component into our device, and so we don't know how all these things are going to fit. So in the past, I'd be having to go to the machine shop, get it made, and there's a lead time. But now it's just I make it in CAD in an hour, and then I throw it on a printer, and then after an hour of wash and cure, our technicians have it in hand to build a product. So, they can tell me right on the spot within a few hours if, yeah, this works or this doesn't, and I know exactly what to fix, on my model, and then I can just do another iteration. So it's pretty nice to have this, technology just to, within a few hours, I know one of my ideas will work or not.
I'd love for you to kind of take that thread and maybe walk the audience through, okay, yes, so we got to have this process where we're iterating overnight. What does the full scope look like? How do I know when I need to bridge from this technology to a different technology or use 3D printed molds? Maybe walk people through what that looks like and how they could maybe implement it internally on their own manufacturing plants.
Yeah, sure. We're not experts at this yet. We're still learning as we go, exactly the same way everyone else is here. But you got to think back, how many times do you get requests? How many times do you find out that you got either availability for a particular piece of test equipment, maybe some particular lab time, or even a meeting with the physician, and it's last minute? It's something that somebody asks you for next day. It happens. It happens more than you imagine. And you know who you are. When you walk into the lab, it's Thursday afternoon or it's Friday morning, and you've got this look in your eye. I know someone's going to be working Saturday making a part so that they can have it either on Monday morning or even Sundays. We have meetings with physicians. Sometimes they want just something that we can evaluate the size or the shape or the feel. What's the ergonomic impact of this particular design? Really simple stuff that we can print quickly and get that immediate feedback from outside sources, our voice of our customers. And even anatomy, we've been looking and doing more and more of that, from everywhere from better communication in a meeting. Maybe that meeting is last minute and you want to bring something to it to help convey that idea or that thought. And you know that this is the way you're going to accomplish that. You're going to be able to get your point across by using that anatomical model. We're even starting to look into, where appropriate, cadaver replacements for these anatomical models, doing things very quickly for different design concepts in the place of maybe you're in a research lab and you have a particular test you want to run, and the cadaver, you get what you get, and it doesn't have the features you were looking for. And so you've already got that lab time. We are able to produce things sometimes that enable that test to still happen. Another thing, Kevin touched on it, is molding. That's a big bridge. That's a way to step towards and a way to continually burn down that risk on your design. So you're 3D printing it, but that part can't go in the body. Part can't be used as a production part. It's only teaching you about your design. So if you take that and you now are able to 3D print a mold, and you're potentially able to mold using a already validated or qualified known material, now you're just that one step closer to getting to that clinical point with just that much less risk.
That's wonderful. I like how you mentioned it's not just part of the prototyping process, but an internal sales tool as well. Whether you're going to a meeting and you need to get buy-in for a project, do you have, I know you have some examples later on that showcase the technology. Do you have any other examples of how you've maybe taken this from a concept to try to bridge that gap by prototyping in one technology and then 3D printing the molds that you could share with the group?
We've done a fair amount of handle design using 3D printing technology. It's something that is intuitive, simple. I know on one particular project, we've gone versions Rev A through K, all 3D printed. We never cut a mold. And by the time we got to the end and we cut that mold, we only had to cut it once. And it was pretty successful. I think we had to cut one part twice. But can you imagine 12 iterations of molds? We're talking millions of dollars and years of waiting for parts to get machined and delivered to you. And we were able to bypass and circumvent all of that and get the design we needed efficiently and economically.
Yeah, that's an excellent example of cost savings. You know, when you look at the developing a medical device, you can think, oh, this is going to take years, but look how much time you shave off just early on in the beginning part of that process if you incorporate additive technology. It's a great example. I'd love for you, Ben, maybe to take that tail end of it, and now that products are out there, they're deployed in the field, people are using them, what kind of things do you look for and think through when you're trying to perfect those devices and make them better?
So I'm going to step back half a step there and say that my human factors role is definitely like before release to production. But I would dovetail with what Scott said in that the opportunity to, as well as Kevin, to iterate more often, and there's a great possibility for time savings. But in addition to potential for time savings, getting these devices in the hands of clinicians early and often helps us hit that high bar of intuitive use, so that we have safe, effective devices that are intuitive to use and mistakes aren't made. So sometimes we just use that extra time from a more effective and efficient process just to make the devices better. Make them feel better in the hand, like Scott said, the handles. Just I can imagine the handle design that is possible after 12 iterations, and how much better that device is for that effort. So yeah, there's a lot that we can do, and getting these devices at high fidelity part in a clinician's hand and watching them use it for the first time, and do it in a safe and effective manner is just very rewarding, and this technology makes it all possible.
And then you had a great story where in the current environment where we all are virtual, you thinking about technology and its ease of use so that technicians could operate it and be able to still continue doing all of the design that you're doing in a totally different environment. Would you mind sharing that story as well, just to get people thinking about technology and ease of use?
Absolutely. There's earlier on in this this level of 3D printing, the refinement was a challenge. There was tweaking that had to go on, and it kept it in the realm of somebody who was willing to invest the time to learn the system. In March, I had the opportunity to introduce one technician in the lab through an introduction of using the printer. And the next thing I knew, it was working from home and could no longer show him directly face to face what to do with this equipment. And I was able to slice the file, get it, all the supports in the right place, email it. He was able to transfer it easily to the machine with a flash drive. It didn't have to deal with network connections, and hit success on the very first try after literally having never done it himself before. It really is, I think, impressive and very helpful as to the level of technology in the printers that are available now.
Yeah, and I love that point because you guys are all medical device experts. You're all additive experts too, but you don't necessarily have to be if the technology can take some of that work out and allow it to be used by anyone by pushing a button a few times and your product comes out well. And that wasn't something maybe to think about as intensely before we had all of this coronavirus and COVID-19 where we had to suddenly be remote and things had to be field deployable or easy enough to use by critical personnel versus you guys needing to be in the shop. So I think that's a helpful way to think about it when adopting technology beyond, I need high resolution because medical devices are getting smaller and I need it to be fast because I have to be able to get through frequent iterations, but also I should probably think about it being easy to use in case I need to have someone other than me operate it for some certain length of time. So I appreciate you sharing that story. I also want to give you guys a chance to talk about how it's impacted design and how additive manufacturing is enabling parts that may have seemed impossible before or allowing you to go A through K on your iterations before having to go cut steel, which is huge cost and time savings. So on that note, I know, Kevin, you had some great perspective on how not only has additive evolved from where it began to where it is today, but how that kind of has a twin progression that nicely pairs up with the evolution of medical device design as well. Could you share about both of those?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as you guys all saw from my first slide, printers can now start spitting out these small, complex parts. It really shows like the evolution of additive manufacturing over the years. Most of us have gone through the frustrations, earlier and with early printers. We got non-robust parts sometimes because the layer size is too big. Sometimes we leave a printer on overnight and then we come back the next day, it's just filament all over the place. Things not sticking. During that time, we mostly use 3D printers for larger fixturing, maybe for, non-critical components. They're kind of slow and unreliable, and materials were also limited. But in just a short time, a few years, it seems like the AM industry was really able to take major leaps forward. It gave us various technologies to use, DLP, metals, SLA, FDM, etc. Each of which I think fill a niche. I don't think there's like a best printer, in my opinion. I don't think there's a one size fits all, but I think each one has its own role, its own benefit. There's the small high resolution ones like the B9 printer. There's the mid-range ones that can do a little bit of everything, like handles and stuff. There's the metal ones, each of which play its own role when designing, and it makes my life really easy because when I'm designing a part, I can just kind of go in and say, okay, I need something that's large, so I'm going to use this printer. I need something that's small, so I'm going to use this other printer. And as we said before, the biggest trend in a medical device right now is miniaturization and trying to fit everything in a small package size. And it definitely seems like the additive manufacturing industry is following suit. So it's been amazing to see the evolution and how we can just, before we used to just print fixturing, and now we can print small robust parts or molds like what Scott was talking about. And at high enough resolution that we can really be confident that our design is what we're, or the part is actually what we designed it to be.
Wonderful.
We can really evaluate a device or a part is suitable to move on to clinical trials now, and not just waiting for a molded or machined part.
How do you think too, not only about the evolution of the hardware platform, but what about material availability? How is that aligned with what your needs are in medical device development?
Yeah, definitely. So the materials have just boomed. I'm having a hard time keeping up. So you can go anywhere from metals all the way to like a soft silicone-like material that's super flexible. So it's been really impressive that you can kind of pick and choose what you want, and it's pretty close to the material that you want it to be. There's those FDM printers that can really make a part super strong by adding a Kevlar support layer, and there's medical grade materials now coming out where you can start using it in at least animal testing and stuff.
Wonderful. Now that we kind of took a high level view of these trends, I'd love to kick it over to you, Scott, and talk about, okay, in that context, where does success come from? What makes a product successful? And maybe talk through some of that, as well as I know we have some illustrative examples here too.
Yeah. So when you release a product, I've been doing process development here at this company for 20 years now plus. And every time we release something to production, there's always like one more test you wanted to do, or there was always one more design you wanted to see. But you met the requirements, you fit the project into a budget, into a timeline, and that's what you had to work with. So I see being able to print stuff like this now is just bringing us that much closer to where we actually wanted to be. Being able to do these iterations, being able to get things done, more parts, more tests, more designs, and still bring it in on budget and in time. And these are just a couple examples I wanted to share with you guys. With my B9, I can finally confidently make these tiny features that typically I would fight. Like, I could get some of these, for example, look at the one I have labeled letter B in the bottom right-hand corner of that gray part. That's 100,000 scale up. That's on that part's on top of. That's a 17,000 by 36,000 slot. I had other machines that I could do that with. If I had that machine absolutely perfect, if I had a beautiful resin tray, if I had brand new material, if the stars aligned, I could print that. Or on other machines, I could print that, but I would have to wait. That'd be a 20+ hour print. Well, now I can turn this thing around in an hour. And something else that's really interesting is I've been making it a habit. Let's say they order 10 of these, and I just run the first set and I get them to them right away. I'll personally walk them and put them on their desk if they happen to be in my area. What happens a lot of times is before you finish that job, they'll come back down with the next version already. Stuff's moving that fast, and that's where we want to be. That's really nice to see. A couple other really interesting features on the A there. That's an OT 80 thread. I'm a machinist. I hated cutting threads like this. I wasn't a Swiss operator. Maybe for Swiss guys, this is super easy. But I had a design engineer who was getting quoted like weeks and thousands of dollars for that part. And she's like, I just want to test this one part. So we printed this thing. I actually had Joel print it for me first because at first I didn't believe it was going to work. And we didn't even print that at the finest settings. That's the nominal settings on the B9 machine. And one caveat, I did undersize the external thread just a hair in CAD to make sure I had the clearance, because I knew that profile it never ends up perfect. And that's actually a working part that they were able to test the design with. It's just amazing. And the last thing I wanted to point out in the C picture, the ability of this B9 printer to print with such minimal support is something that is so enjoyable. Being able to take your part out, pop it off the build plate, clean it, cure it in 10 minutes, and be done, you fall in love with it really quick. And if you look at the left-hand side of that picture and C, that's an example of how we used to call it like elephant's foot or flare. Those first few layers get more energy density than the subsequent layers. So you tend to get a little bit of a material overcure between that build plate interface and the model support and the model material. But you can hardly see any visible flare right there. And that's been true over and over and over again. And that's something I've really liked about this technology, is the ability to print with such little support.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful, and I actually appreciate you bringing up post-processing. We call that the hidden cost of 3D printing, where people are giving you these quotes on time, and it just has to be the print time instead of thinking about software and post-processing. Do you have any lessons learned there on either end of the printing that you would think would be beneficial to share with the audience when they're thinking about when do I adopt additive, how do I adopt additive, when do I upgrade, etc.?
Ooh, say it again, one more time for me.
Do you have any lessons learned with post-processing or software, like print preparation software on the beginning, that you think would be helpful to share with people as they're trying to figure out what technology do I bring in-house?
Post-processing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, resin's different than metal, different than FDM. What kind of thoughts do you have there for folks as they're
it might not be the same track you're on, but post-processing on parts like this is a bit of an art. This isn't something that every single person can pick up and adequately clean to a level of quality that somebody is actually expecting. There's a certain amount of dexterity and precision that comes along with cleaning these parts up. There's a learning curve to that, and it's not just take it out of the machine, wash it, cure it, and throw it in a bag, and you're done. That's why being able to minimize the amount of support helps reduce that amount of art that needs to be taken after the print job has been done. There's been a lot of tricks too with learning how to cure, not necessarily with your technology, but other SLA technologies. You get part warpage. Learning when to anticipate that, how to constrain your parts if they do warp, how to then reflatten them. We've learned very quickly what the heat deflection temp on all of our materials are in our lab. We know exactly right from our memory because we've melted enough parts and deformed enough parts to have learned that the hard way.
Yeah, no, I think that's helpful. It's just not something that's always readily apparent when you're thinking about technologies, but it's incredibly important because that's what's going to give you your final product. So I appreciate you sharing that. I wanted to give you this slide as well because I know you had some other points you wanted to talk about in terms of the technology.
Yeah, this is something that's been really impressive with your software and machine. So I have other DLP printers in our lab, and as you look in the upper right-hand corner, that's that telltale grid. It looks like a linen cloth pattern gets impregnated on that surface. It's the byproduct of the technology. But you've got something called, what is it, slice for surface finish? Mm-hmm. And at first you might think, oh man, this is just a gimmick. It is not a gimmick. And for an example, the part in the left there, that part's only a half an inch big in its left to right length. And I've zoomed in on that at 40x at about 1/8 of an inch. And you can, in fact, if you look really, really, really close, you can see that specular reflection. You can actually see the dots, the DLP array in that tiny radius. But the horizontal surfaces, the surfaces that were actually parallel to the build surface, where you get that, you either get it exactly there or you get it at exactly 90 degrees along a vertical surface. It really does manage that. It makes that part as good as a molded part in most cases. And I've been really impressed by that.
Yeah, if I could just add something to this, actually, we've actually liked the slice for surface finish for the opposite reason. So actually, we uncheck it sometimes. So it's great that you guys add it as a feature that we can have or not. Well, because like for us, we're trying to bond the parts a lot of times, and so if you uncheck slice for surface finish, you do get those ridges, which allow for more surface area to bond to, and it's really helped in our lab for some parts. So it's nice to have the option. Yeah.
That's good. That's good perspective because they're for different reasons that you guys are doing these different parts for. And then I'll give you all a chance to talk to this as well because I think it's worth discussing in depth. But I'd love, Ben, for you to take it and kind of talk about how do you decide what do I bring in-house, what do I outsource, when do I bring in-house, and then you also had some really unique applications that you're using additive for that we haven't talked about. So I want to give you an opportunity to touch on both of those things.
Sure. Like I said, a couple of decades ago, outsourcing for an SLA machine, there are some really good service bureaus out there. They've just been getting better and better about that. But still, if you're going outside, you're never going to get parts in hours. You're always going to be in the 2 days, give or take a little bit. So the parts, I think, that come off of an internal 3D printer are more cost effective. Even the fully loaded cost of the parts is going to be less than it is outsourcing, but it's really hard to put a value on the speed that Kevin and Scott have both mentioned. Being able to turn around multiple iterations in a single day is just phenomenal. There's another interesting thing is our service bureau, which I'm utterly thrilled with. They have got some artists there for their they will paint and finish to very much like a finished final product. And we use them when we have refined the design internally to such a point where it's worthwhile to spend that extra money, spend the extra time on that high level of finish quality. The service bureaus are really hard to beat. I just don't want to take my time or even my technicians' time to do that level of surface finish and final in paint in most cases. The challenge comes when we get into some parts, colored parts that have embossed or debossed writing on them. We often have raised lettering or logos on our parts, and those parts are very challenging for our service bureau. The painting process is very good. They use automotive grade multi-part paints, but it does a number on the fine detail of a raised lettering on a part. So I have worked with some colorants that can be added to the resin. An SLA, a commercial SLA printer has got many, many liters of material in the machine, and they could not possibly custom color the resin. Having a printer that has a vat that can print with 100 milliliters of resin allows me to adjust the color of that part and print with a solid resin throughout the part as it would be done in an injection molding. The thermoset resins are not exactly like the thermoplastics that we injection mold with, but the appearance of the parts is phenomenal working in that way. So I really appreciate having a system that has the ability to take a material and pour a little bit in the vat and work through it and refine the coloring.
Are there any other unique applications you wanted to touch on, Ben? Either manufacturing aids or guides, anything you feel that hasn't been covered that people could use additive for?
Sure, there was some mention of fixturing in production, and the filament printers can do a good job with that. Our manufacturing process for our products uses a lot of solvent bonding of components to tubing, and the filament printers are porous, produce porous end parts, and depending on the resin that you choose, they're may be susceptible to degradation with the solvents. That's one advantage of the thermoset materials, is it's quite inert to the solvents that we use in our assembly processes. So it's okay to build a prototype fixture and have it near those solvents. It actually works out quite well. The other side of fixturing is in the R&D lab itself. We don't want to be designing our parts for our grippers and fixtures on our tension, compression, and torque testers. So we do a lot of custom grippers and fixtures for our lab so that we can make parts that are comfortable in people's hands, but yeah, we can still fixture them to test them adequately.
Great. I don't know if Scott or Kevin, I know you guys too, it's some I bring in-house. Sometimes I'm recommending other departments when to bring in-house or use you guys as an internal service bureau. Is there anything else you would add in terms of the 3D printing evaluation criteria when trying to decide what to bring in-house versus outsource internally versus outsource to a service bureau?
Yeah, I mean, so pretty much the biggest thing for us is time. You know, for coming from a big company, cost isn't as big of a thing, but obviously is something we have to consider. And technology for 3D printers has been getting cheaper. So the cost has really been going down. So the biggest thing is time now. And, time to iteration, has kind of been the main theme through this whole thing. And that's what pretty much has been driving us to bring more printers in-house rather than going out and outsourcing, whether it's machining or molding.
For us, because we're actually the service group, the decision's really easy. We look and see what requests are we getting that we're having the hardest time fulfilling, or what are we going outside most frequently for? And then it's just a simple analysis to figure out, yep, it makes sense. We need to bring this in. Or what are we fighting the most, or what are we waiting for the longest internally? And in this case, we were the fine, small resolution features. We were printing a ceramic doped material. We were printing molds that we were molding lure fittings with, and 1/2 of one mold was taking 30 hours to build on this particular printer. So we knew we needed to improve that. So that's what we went looking for next. And that was actually what led us to B9 in this case.
Those are great examples. Debbie, I don't know if we have any questions. I want to give an opportunity if there are any for that. And then just if you're interested in connecting with us as a company and finding out more about what we do, you can certainly request a sample, get a product demo, or talk to a medical solutions expert as well at that info@b9c.com. And the great part is that because we're the technology providers, we love to have our customers be the subject matter experts. So all of these panelists that are sharing this great information with you, if you have a question that we can't answer, that's why we have a global network of people that are a lot smarter than I am and definitely more qualified to answer them in the medical space. So we'd love to hear from you. And then Debbie, I want to give an opportunity. Have we had any questions?
We've had quite a few. We do have to end right at 1, but I will give one question some airtime here. So does anyone on the panel have any experience with printing implants for patients? Since the anatomy of every person is different, I would assume that the required fidelity is extremely high and would require much more iterations to perfect each part for the patient. So if anyone on the panel would like to speak to that.
No, I don't have any experience in that.
So I'll just jump in a little bit. One of the divisions of our company does joint replacements, and there is the opportunity, not necessarily for an implantable part, but for cutting fixtures and whatnot that are tailored to specific anatomy. I can say that that's out of the realm of my particular division, but there are absolutely applications for it, and there are better and better biocompatible resins coming on the market all the time.
Great, thanks a lot. For those that have questions, please feel free to speak out B9 Creations and their friends here at their booth, which is right out there on the platform. And thank you to all the panelists. Wonderful session, great visuals, really good. I tweeted a few things, so we're sharing some of this information. And just thanks to everybody, and we will see you throughout the day. So thanks very much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Take care.
Feel free to send us your questions.